Shalom. Adonai Echayim. Adonai Echayim. English? Be not afraid. Adonai Echayim, it means, may the Lord be with you. Yes, I am Joseph, son of Jacob. I believe you know my son, yes? He's been good boy, I trust. Yeah? And my wife, Miriam. No. English. Mary. You know my wife, Mary, yes? Many have asked why there is so little that is written about me in your book. I tell them the answer, she is simple. Your book is not about me. It's about my son, yes? But some have said, they say, there is not one word I ever spoke recorded in your book. So some say, well, perhaps Joseph was mute. You can hear, yeah, I know you can hear they were wrong, yes? but one woman, she said, no. If he is mute, it makes sense because they call him the perfect husband. We have the marriage peoples here, yes? Well, I tell you, I am perfect at nothing. I do strive for perfect devotion to God. I was raised that way. My father Jacob raised me to devote my life in all ways, all things to God. I have been called a great many things throughout the history. Did you know this? Yes, defender of the faith, the protector of the Christ child. Did you know that some peoples, they even call me saint? Yeah. I was not surprised to learn they do not call you saint until long after. Anyone who could have ever possibly known you on earth is long dead. Of all that I have been called for 2,000 years, I have one favorite. Would you like to know? Yes? One favorite. Papa. Yes, Papa. Would it surprise you to learn he calls me Papa to this very day? And I want you to know, he said Papa long before he ever said Mama. No, very smart boy he was. Yes. Well, I was born in Bethlehem. Did you know that? Same as my son. But when I was small, my father moved our entire family, save two older brothers who were married with the families of their own. They stayed in Bethlehem. The rest of us, we moved to a place called Nazareth in Galilee. And it's in Nazareth where I grew up. But more important, it's in Nazareth where I met Mary. And may I tell you something about Mary? Yeah, Mary had a smile that when she would walk into a room, just walk into the room seemed to just light up. Do you know people like this? Well, this is my Mary, yes? Would you like me to tell you something else about Mary? Yes? If you don't, just say no. No, yes? Okay. You have to promise me you will not tell her I told you this. No, please. Yes? You promise? Yeah, Mary loved to laugh. She loved to laugh. I believe with all my heart the reason that Jesus loved to laugh is from his mother. He learned to laugh from Mary, yes? But Mary had a laugh that when she started to laugh, she cannot stop laughing. It would just keep laughing and laughing, and she could not stop laughing. And when we were married, and she would be angry at me, I know, you say, how could anyone be angry at you, Joseph? I know. But when she was angry at me, I knew how to make her laugh. And I'd make her laugh, and she'd laugh and laugh, could not stop, and she'd forget why she was angry at me. It makes sense, yes? No, because then she was mad at me for making her to laugh. So I lost both ways, yes? I believe it was at a funeral. It was the funeral for my mother that I first realized Mary was to be very special to me. I remember I was standing there in my father's house. Many peoples were coming to pay the respects for my mother, yes? And now I am a man now. I'm 14 years of age. In my day, you are a man at 13. So I am 14, I am a man, and men do not cry. So I am standing there and I'm greeting the peoples as they come. And Mary, she's off to the side. And she just keeps looking at me. And finally she comes over to me and she looks and she says, Joseph, why do you stand there like the statue? This day is for your mother, Joseph. I know how much you love your mother. You must cry for your mother, Joseph. And do you know, she took my hand into hers. The moment she put my hand into hers, I started to cry. Mary was wise, well beyond her years, yes? We were both very pleased. Some years later, we learned my father, her father, decide we should become betrothed. Now, in my day, betrothal is different than, what is that called today before you are married? What? Yes, yeah, I think it's different. In betrothal in my day, it lasts for 1 year's time, and you are married. It is a contract of marriage when you are betrothed. The only difference is, number one, you do not know each other intimately, and you do not live under the same roof. But other than that, you are contractually married when you are betrothed. Different than engaged, yes? And there are two ways to break this contract of marriage when you are betrothed. One, if the man feels the woman has been disloyal to him, he can take the woman before a judge, present the evidence, and many times the only evidence is the word of the husband. That's fair, yes? And we do have married peoples here. And then if the judge says yes, she is guilty, he can sentence her to death. And she is taken out and she is stoned to death. Different than your engagement, yes? And the other way, the second way under our law, Mosaic law, to break this contract of marriage is if the man and the woman decide that they both want to go their separate ways. They go before two witnesses, they present their reasons, and the two witnesses will grant them a writ of divorcement. Again, I think much different than your today engagement, yes? Now, we were betrothed. It lasts for 1 year's time. At the end of 1 year, the men all gather at the man's house. They parade down the street to the woman's house. They take her from her house, bring her back to the man's house, and there is a celebration. It lasts for 1 week's time. And so Mary and I, we are betrothed, yes? Not long later, she comes to me and she says, Joseph, I must speak to you. And I said, well, yes, Mary, please. She says, no. Let us go to our spot, our place. Do people who are in love today, in your world today, do they have a place? They say, this is our place? No? Oh, yes. Okay. Where? You don't know. It's your place, but you don't know. No, I don't know. It's your place. It's not my place. I'm just wondering because Mary and I, we had our place, and it was up on the side of the hill in Nazareth. And we would go there and sit on the rocks, and we would talk about our life together. Do you ever do that when you're in love? You're young, you talk about your future, what is God going to do with our lives? You ask yourselves, yes? So Mary and I, we ask ourselves, what is going to happen with our lives? We do this in our place. Well, you have to go in my day, you have to be, when you are betrothed, you have to have a chaperone, yes? But Mary and I, we knew how to get away. And so I say to Mary, yes, I will meet you at our place. And so I met her there at the side of the hill on the rocks. And she sits, and she stands, and then she moves, and then she sits, and I could tell she was very nervous. And I say to her, Mary, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? I just want you to tell me what is on your mind, what is on your heart. There is nothing you can say to me, Mary, that will change my love for you. I love you more than my own life. And she looked at me and she said, Joseph, she said, I am with child. Well, I was stunned, yes, I was shocked. But I knew one thing. If she was with child, it was not of her own accord. She would not have done that to herself. She would not have done that to her parents. She would not have done that to me. That's not my Mary. So I knew if she was with child, it was someone else who had forced her to do this. So I say to her, was it one of the Romans? The Romans occupied our land, and they were known to have their way with the young Jewish girls. So I said to her, was it one of the Romans, Mary? Did they attack you? Did they rape you? And she looked at me, she said, Joseph, I have been with no man. I looked at her and I said, Mary, I said, I do not understand. By the way, because I don't understand does not mean I don't believe her. I believe Mary. Mary could not lie. I know Mary too well. Somehow she was telling me the truth. So I said to her, Mary, I need to go home and I must pray. She says, I'll tell you this, my Joseph. I had a vision. She said, in the vision, a heavenly being appeared to me and said I was carrying a child of the heavens. I said, yes, Mary, thank you. I will go home, I will pray. You see, my father Jacob raised me to pray to God, to go to God good times, go to God in bad times, and ask God for for direction, yes? So I went home that day and I started to pray. For 1 week, every day I prayed to God. I said, please help me to understand. I do not understand what Mary is saying to me. Help me to understand. Well, after 1 week, I decided what I was going to do. I decided that in the next day I would go to Mary and say, Mary, let us go before 2 witnesses and ask for a writ of divorcement. Have you ever in your life made a decision, but you knew deep down it was wrong? Did you ever just, you think this is what I want to do, and deep down something says, no, that is not right, yes? That is how I felt. I remember I went to bed, and I'm tossing, I'm turning, and I'm thinking to myself, is this the right decision? And do you know, just as I fell asleep, I had a vision. Did you know that? I had a vision of my own. And I saw a heavenly being there, and he said to me, be not afraid, Joseph, son of David. He said that Mary has told you rightly. She is carrying a child of the Holy Spirit. And they said to me, we want you to raise this child as your own, Joseph. And we want you to name him Jesus. Well, after the vision, I woke up. And I knew right then and there that was God. God was speaking to me. God was saying what he wanted me to do. So I wanted to go to Mary's. Right then I wanted to go to, I got dressed. I started to leave, but it was the middle of the night. I could not go. So I wanted to go to Mary to say, I am sorry, please forgive me. Please forgive me for even to consider divorce. By the way, I was considering divorce not because I did not believe her, but because I did believe her. And I knew that if God had ordained this, I had no place in it. I am not worthy. And I went to watch for morning light to come. And as soon as it was morning light, by the way, I did what I do when I am nervous. I pace. My room is from here to here. So all night long I'm doing this back and forth. And I'm looking at the small window. And I'm looking for the light, back and forth. Finally, at the first light, I run to Mary's house. Now, Mary's house is 362 paces from mine. No, we children, we count. We know how many paces it is to each of our friends' house. Do people count today? No? They don't count at all anymore, no? That's a problem in your world, I think. You must, what? Someone said something to me. You have to be willing to count. You see, in my day, on Sabbath, we were not allowed under our law to walk more than 100 paces. So we had to know how far it was to anyone's house that we might go to, yes? So Mary was 362 paces. I knew this. That morning I made it in less than 100. I was excited. I wanted to beg for her forgiveness. So I went to her door, and her father answered, is Joachim. And I said, Joachim, I beg of you, please, would you let Mary and me go and talk? I need to talk to her privately. You know, he said yes. No, I thought to myself, why did we sneak off all those times? I should have just asked him. Yes. Well, Mary and I, we went to our place on the rocks. And I said to her, Mary, please forgive me, Mary. I was going to come here today to say, let us go before the witnesses and get rid of divorcement. But Mary, I am sorry. I am sorry for even to consider divorce. But I had a vision, Mary, a vision of my own, not dissimilar to yours. In my vision, the heavenly beings said they want me to raise this child with you, Mary, and we are to name him Jesus. Will you forgive me, my Mary? She looked at me, she said, there is nothing to forgive, my husband. I love you more than life itself. I love you. There's no one I want to raise this child with more than you. Let me tell you, the heavens, they bless me with one of the most wonderful women they ever created, yes? And then she said to me this, she said, well, don't you think that we should go to my father and see if we could be married now and not wait the full 1 year? I said, yes, Mary. Very smart, Mary. Yes, 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 yes. Why don't you go to your father and she said to me, now, Joseph, something else I will tell you about Mary. Whenever she would say to me, now, Joseph, I knew I was in trouble. And she said to me, now, Joseph, you are the man. You will go and you will ask my father. I said, yes, of course, Mary. I will do. So I went to her father. I said, Joachim, I must ask this of you. Please, 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 just hear me. I want you to allow us to be married now, not wait the full 1 year. You know, he must have had vision of his own. He said yes. So very shortly after all the men gathered at my house, they were there. We traveled down to Mary's house, took her from her parents, brought her back to my house, and we celebrated for 1 week's time. And then we were married. Praise be to God. Yes? Yes. Not long after, we were given a notice that I was to go where I was born for a census. And I thought about it, and I decided I'm the man, and so I will make the decision. We will not be going to Bethlehem. Bethlehem is 100 of your miles from where we live. 100 miles. The road is bad, the weather is bad, and we have no way to get there. So I make the decision, and Mary is very... I never understood the word very. You are either pregnant or you are not. Am I right? Well, Mary, she was a lot pregnant. So I say to her, I said, Mary, we received this notice, Mary. We're to go to where I was born. We have to go and register for census. But don't worry, Mary. I make the decision. I'm the man. I make the decision. We will not go. And she looked at me and she said, now, Joseph, I knew I was in trouble. She said, we are Jews, are we not? And I said, well, yes, Mary, of course we are Jews. She said, we are good Jews, are we not? I said, no. We strive to be the good Jews. She said, yes. We strive to be the good Jews. She says, as people who are striving to be the good Jews, we are called to follow Mosaic law, yes? And I said, well, yes, of course, Mary. She says, the Mosaic law says we're to follow the law of Moses. Yes, Mary, that's true. And it also says we're to follow the law of the land, yes? I said, yes, Mary, it does. She says, if the law of the land says we're to go to Bethlehem to register for census, then we go to Bethlehem to register for census. I never liked it when she argued the law against me. I never. Fun. So I said to her, Mary, how are we going to go? It is 100 miles. You are very pregnant. And the weather is bad, the roads are... How are we... She says to me, go to your father to borrow a donkey. You see, we were very modest, very poor. We had next to nothing. So I said to her, Mary, yes, I will go. So I went to my father. I borrowed a donkey from him. I brought it back, and I built a seat. Did you know that I'm a builder? Yes? So I built a seat under the donkey for Mary to sit and to put our things, and then we began the journey. Now, this took much longer than I had expected. The weather was worse, the roads were worse, and Mary had to keep stopping and resting to get off the donkey and rest. And I'd say to her, Mary, we have to go. You have to stop. I am carrying our child. I need to rest. You rest all you want, Mary. Oh, yes, of course. Well, it took longer. When we arrived in Bethlehem, it was much later than I had expected. I had planned to stay at the home of one of my brothers, but their homes were filled with the other relatives all coming in for the census. So one of my brothers says, Joseph, there is an inn on the other side of Bethlehem. You go there, they will likely have a room for you. And I said, yes. He told me how to get there. So Mary gets back up onto the donkey, and we start the journey through Bethlehem. Now, Bethlehem normally has 100, 200 people. Because of the census, there were 2,000 to 3,000 people. And so this is very filled with people. And Mary was tired of sitting up onto the donkey. She kept getting off the donkey. And I say to her, Mary, you need to listen to me. You need to get back up onto the donkey. You need to stay on the donkey and don't get off the donkey. The peoples will push you, they'll jostle you, they'll knock you to the ground. Get up and stay on the donkey. I remember this for a good reason, I think. I believe it's the only time in my marriage she actually listened to exactly what I said and did it right when I said it. So she's got onto the donkey. When we arrived at the inn, I said, Mary, please just wait here. I'll go in and arrange for some place for us. So I go in. There's a man, a keep. I say to him, excuse me, we are here for the census. We need a room. But do you know what he told me? He told me there is no room. There's nothing. And I say to him, but we traveled all the way from Nazareth in Galilee, a great distance. He said, I'm sorry, there is no room. And I said, but my wife is very tired. And he said, I'm sorry, there is no room. I said, my wife is very... That's when you say very, when you are negotiating. I said, she is very pregnant. And he said, I am sorry, if I had a room, I would give you a room. I have no room for you. And I said, yes, I understand. And I started to leave, and I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to tell Mary? I told her that this night we would be away from the stars. We would be in a room. We would be protected. And what am I going to say? And just as I am starting to leave, the man must have had a vision. Because he called me back and he said, wait, I don't have a room, but I have a cave where we keep the animals behind the inn. If you like, you may stay there in that cave. Now, let me tell you something. I know that this innkeep has been spoken of poorly for many years. Am I right? Because he did not have a room for us. It was not his fault. It was not his fault there was a census. It was not his fault that we were late in arriving and there was no room at my brother's. It was not his fault. And he did not have to give us anything. And yet he gave us this cave. And in my day, we have friends back in Nazareth who live in caves. So this was wonderful for us. So in fact, that very night, Mary and I, when we were going to bed, we were falling asleep, we asked God's blessings on that innkeep. So I ask you to say blessings for the innkeep, yes? So we go to sleep. The next morning, I wake up. Do you know what Mary is doing? She's cleaning. This is a cave where you keep the animals. And Mary is cleaning. She's moving these animals over here, these animals over here. She goes and gets this trough where the animals eat, pulls it over to here, gets the old hay, throws it, goes and gets new hay, puts it into the trough, and then she takes my tunic, my best tunic. I only have two. And she gives my best tunic and she puts it onto the trough. And I say to her, Mary, what are you doing? That is my best tunic. And she said to me, Joseph, if you're not going to keep your mouth closed and help me, then please leave. Wow. I never saw Mary like this before. So I was happy to leave. And I got up, and we do have married people. I got up and I left. As I was outside, wondering what was wrong with Mary, she calls me back. She said, Joseph, come back in. Now, I ran back. She looks at me. She said, Joseph, it's time. I said, oh. Time for what? No, I'm 19 years of age. What do I know about bringing the babies into the world? In my day, the man has nothing to do with the birth of the child. Do they today? Yes? Sometimes? Why? Yeah, you wouldn't know. No, you're younger than me. But no, exactly right. No, I had no idea about it. She says, I'm ready to give birth, Joseph. I said, oh, wonderful. We've been waiting for this. She got angry at me again. And she said, Joseph, I need help. You may not know this. Childbirth is the #1 cause of death for the young Jewish girls in my day. So I said, if we were back home in Nazareth, her mother was there. She had the friends that would have helped her. There were people to help her. But here there was no. And she said, I need help, Joseph. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? She said, please go to that innkeep. He was nice. He provided a place to stay. Maybe he will know of someone. So I went to the innkeep. He said, yes, I know of a young girl. He goes, he gets her for me, brings her back. I bring her to Mary. And I said, Mary, this young girl has experience to bring the babies into the world. Mary says, thank you, now leave. Twice in one day I was told to leave. But again, I was happy to go, yes? So I'm outside the cave. And I'm what do I tell you I do when I am nervous? Yes, I'm pacing back and forth. I thought this was going to be fast. You know, this took 2 or 3 hours. And I'm back and forth like this. So the other thing I do is if I find a piece of wood, I begin to carve on it. I never know what it's going to be when I start to carve. And this day, this is what I carved. It's a, how do you say, whistle, flute. Yes, and so I'm sitting there and I decide this is going to be the very first gift I ever make for my son, yeah? And as I am there admiring my good work, I hear the most beautiful sound I ever heard in my life. I heard my son scream. And then Mary calls to me. She says, Joseph, come in quickly. And I remember I ran back in. I was there just in time to watch as the young girl, she cut the cord. And then she put my son onto a linen, and she began to take salt and putting it onto the body. That's what we do in my day to protect the skin. And she's rubbing the salt into the skin, and then she takes the linen and wraps it around him. But she wrapped it too tightly. And I said to her, I said, excuse me, I think you wrapped it too tightly. He's not going to be able to breathe. And she looked at me and she said, oh, have you wrapped a lot of young babies? And I said, well, no. She says, well, leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. This was not my best day with women. So then she took him and she started to hand him to me. But what do I know about holding a newborn baby? So I said, no, thank you, please, to Mary. And I watched as she went and handed our son to Mary. And I just stood there. I could not say a word. I was watching Mary as she's holding for the first time our son. It was the most beautiful moment for me in my entire life. And I'm just watching. And all of a sudden, Mary kicks to me and she says, don't you think you should thank this young girl so she can go home? I said, yes, of course, Mary. I said, thank you. We could not have done this without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the young girl, she left. Well, then I sit down next to Mary, and I just look at her. It was the most beautiful thing I'm ever looking at in my life. My wife holding our baby, and I'm just watching. But Mary is very tired. Have you ever sat and talked to someone who is very tired, and their eyes start to close, and then their head starts to go down, and they do this? Have you seen this? Yes, I'm talking to her, Mary, about what you did. And she head's doing. And so finally I say to her, Mary, just lie down and go to sleep. It's been a long trip. You've just given birth. Lie down and rest. And that's what she did. She laid right down, fell asleep. But then I became nervous. She's still holding on to Jesus. And I'm thinking to myself, what if in her sleep she rolls over on top of him and suffocates him, yes? So I said to myself, I'm going to go and get help. I know. I'll go get that girl. She'll know what to do. And I started to leave the cave. And then I think to myself, I'm the father of this child. I will protect him. Yes? So I went back in. And I knelt down before them. And I picked up my son for the first time. And I held him. Held them right there close in my arms. First thing I did, I loosened that linen. No, it was too tight. His face was going blue. So I loosened it up, and his little hand, it came up. Did you know that newborn babies have nails? I did not know this. You had the best, aren't the nails? They're beautiful nails, yes? He has the best looking nails I've ever seen. You have the best looking nails. And I took that little hand of his, and I began to kiss it, and the whole hand, it went into my mouth. And I'm kissing his hand. And then I leaned over and I kissed him on the face. I did not even think I was kissing the face of God. I said, how are you today? What do you say to a newborn baby? Yes, yeah, hey, I made something for you. Yes, your mother sent me outside while I was, you'll learn about that, yes. And I made this for you. Oh, he smiled. Did you see that? Can a newborn baby smile? You smile. You like that? You like this? Can a newborn baby smile? Yeah. You like that, yes? Maybe one day you'll learn to play this. You'll play a song for your mother and me. Yes? Let me tell you, this was the best moment in my life, holding my newborn boy. And I'm holding him. And then I realize he's very tired. So I go over to the trough that Mary had made clean with my new tunic. Somehow, it did not matter now. It was my best tunic. And I took him and I set him into the trough, covered him up. And then I sat back and I fell fast asleep. But do you know the next morning we were awakened very early? And I went to the entrance of the cave and there were shepherds. They were there. And I said to them, be quiet. We are trying to sleep. My wife just gave birth. You have to be quiet. And they say, we know all about it. We are shepherds. We were out in our fields all night, and the heavenly beings appeared and said, we are to come here, for the Messiah was born. Now put yourself in my place. People you don't even know are pushing by you. They're coming in and dropping down to their knees, and they're praying before your son. Yes? Well, on the 8th day, which is the day of circumcision and naming, I performed the ceremony and I circumcised my son. And then as I was instructed in the dream, I named him Jesus. Yes? On the 40th day, which is the presentation at the temple, I took Mary and Jesus to the temple. And as we're walking up the steps of the great temple, this older man, comes over to us, tells us his name is Simeon. And he just keeps looking. He doesn't look at Mary or me. He's just looking at our son. He's looking at the face of our son. And all of a sudden he begins to shout. He said, the prophecy this day has been fulfilled. He told us that years before he was told that he will not die until with his own eyes he saw the Messiah. He said, this day I look into the face of your son. I know the prophecy is fulfilled. Did you know a woman, Anna, came and said the same thing to us? Yes. Well, we left. We went back home to Nazareth. But every year, according to our law, we went back to Jerusalem to the temple. We went in Jesus' first year and in his second year. When we were there on the second year, we decided to go and visit my brothers in Bethlehem. So we go the distance to Bethlehem. It's about 20 more miles. And we are visiting with my brothers. Now, at one point I remember Jesus is playing in the room on the floor, and I'm watching him. And all of a sudden we heard animals, many camels, other animals outside. And I looked, I could tell by how they are dressed, they are very wealthy, these people. And these men, they come to the door entrance, and they just look in the entrance. And then they just walk right into the door. They don't ask, they just walk right in. And they see our son there on the ground, on the floor. Do you know they laid down flat on their stomachs right in front of our son? And Mary is hearing this, so she comes out from the other room, and she looks and she says, Joseph, what is this? I said, I don't know, Mary. She said, don't you think you should ask? I was just about to, Mary. And so I say to them, excuse me, who are you? They told me that they had been traveling for 1,200 miles. 1,200 miles just to see our son. Following a star led them right to our son. This is what they said to me. And then they called to their servants and they brought in gifts. One brought gold, another one frankincense, another one brought myrrh, and put them right there in front of Jesus. And Mary says to me, Joseph, you tell them we cannot accept those gifts. Those gifts are much too valuable for us. And I say to her, Mary, those gifts are not for us, they are for Jesus. And she said, now, Joseph, I said, okay, don't worry. I said, I'm sorry, we cannot accept those gifts. We are very modest, very poor people. Those gifts are much too expensive for us. But you know, they looked at me and they said they have carried them for the entire 1,200 miles just to give them to our son. We must accept them. And you know, before they left, they said, we're going to tell you one more thing. We met with your King Herod, and he told us he wants your son dead. And he's ordered the death of all boys 2 years of age and under. You must do something to protect your son. So that night, Mary and I, we were going to bed, and we asked God for an understanding. Help us to understand. Do they tell us the truth? Do I need to do something to protect my son? Did you know I had another vision? I had a vision that night, and the vision told me to take my wife and my son that very night and go into Egypt. Now, my father raised me to listen to God, to go to God, and when God says something to you, you say to God, yes. So I tell Mary of the vision, and do you know that that very night we left, we went into Egypt. Now, Egypt was very difficult for me. We were there for most of 3 years, and it was very hard to get work. It was very hard to support my family. Did you ever ask yourself, how did Joseph support his family for 3 years traveling in Egypt? No? Would you like me to tell you? Gold, frankincense, myrrh. They are very valuable, yes? Do not ever tell me that God does not provide. Even when you do not know, He is providing, yes? So I complained the entire 3 years we were there. I complained about everything. It was very difficult. It was the worst 3 years of my life. And Mary was tired of my complaining. And she says to me, she said, Joseph, have you not told me that you are named for Joseph from our scriptures? And I said, yes, that's what I was told. The patriarch Joseph, I am named for him. And she said, do I recall from the scriptures that Joseph the patriarch went also to Egypt? And she said, yes, Mary, you know your scriptures. Yes, that is true. And she says, do I remember from the scriptures that Joseph the patriarch went to Egypt as a slave? I said, yes, Mary, you remember, yes. She said, you are a free man. You stop your complaining. I never liked it when she would argue the scriptures against me. Well, after 3 years, I had another vision. And the vision told me that Herod, the king who wanted my son dead, had died, and it was safe to go back. And so I took Mary and Jesus back home to Nazareth. Now, we lived in a very small house. There were 3 rooms, and it was white mud brick with a thatched roof. I tell you that for a reason. I have a habit. Do men today have habits? Yes? Only the women say yes. My habit was I collected things. So if I saw things like pieces of wood or rock, I would bring them home and I'd put them in a room to store. I told you I'm a builder, yes? But some people think I'm a carpenter. Is that right? You may not know this. Where I live in Nazareth, there was very little wood. Very little wood. And so if I ever needed to build something or to fix something for somebody with the wood, it was expensive because there was no wood. So if I found wood and I was storing it and I had it there for storage to use, that makes sense, doesn't it? It's good business, yes? Well, Mary didn't think so. Mary said to me, Joseph, I need you to clean the room. We only have 3, and you have 1 room that's filled with all these things you bring in. You need to clean your room. And I said to her, Mary, I need this for my business. I don't want to hear about it. She said, now, Joseph? I said, yes, Mary, I will clean the room. I think I told her I'd clean the room maybe 100 times. I don't think I ever did. I planned to, but I don't think I ever did. Well, I earned a living for my family by traveling 3.5 miles to the capital city of Galilee, a place called Sepphoris. And it was in Sepphoris where I worked. Herod, the son of the King Herod who wanted my son dead, was rebuilding Sepphoris to be like a Roman city. So he was hiring the builders like me to rebuild the city. So I worked in marble and rock and with wood, 3.5 miles there, 3.5 miles back every day. Now, when Jesus was old enough, we showed him where our place was on the side of the hill, yes? And he used to go there when he was old enough. When he knew I was coming home, he'd go up onto the place on the rocks because you could see to the other side of Galilee, we believe, from there. And he would just sit there and he would wait. And when he saw me coming way down the road, he'd start to, Papa, 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 do you see me, Papa? And I'd say, don't jump, you're going to fall, Papa. And I'd say, and then when he got older and thought he was smarter than me, he used to go down to the road and hide behind the large rocks. And he didn't think I knew he was there, especially after the 400th time. And he's hiding behind the rock. And as I got close, he jumped, Papa, Papa. And I said, oh, you're giving me the heart attack. Why do you do this? Why do I do that? That's what papas do, yes? That's what papas do. Well, when Jesus was old enough, he used to travel with me into Sepphoris. Every day, 3.5 miles to Sepphoris and 3.5 miles back. And I taught him to be a builder. Did you know that Jesus was a builder? Oh, he was. Let me tell you. A woman came to me and said to me, I have this table, I need you to fix it. Can you fix it for me? I said, yes, of course. It'll be 2 weeks' time. She said, well, you think you could have your son do it? And it's not funny. No, I taught him his trade and he was taking the business away from me. Yeah, he was good. It was on that 3.5-mile journey that I taught him the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. I taught him every part of those 5 books. Just as my father taught me to memorize it, his father taught him. I taught Jesus to memorize those books. And also I taught him his prayers. Would you like to know the very first prayer I ever taught to Jesus? Yes? Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Repeat. Shema Israel, Adonai. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Echad. It means, oh, you got the Chad. Very good. That was wonderful. It means, Hero Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. That was the very first prayer I was taught, the very first prayer my father was taught. I suspect it's the very first prayer young Jewish children are taught to this very day. Praise be to God, you prayed that prayer. Many times on the journey, Jesus would ask questions. For example, we were there once and there was a lot of sheep, and a shepherd came, called out to the sheep, but only some of the sheep left to follow the shepherd. And Jesus says to me, Papa, why do only some of the people follow the shepherd? And I said to him, I said, Jesus, that's why I teach you to pray. You pray to God so you know God's voice and God knows your voice. Only some of the sheep belong to those shepherds. They know his voice because he's fed them, he's saved them, he's took care of them, so they follow their shepherd. They know their shepherd by their voice. That's why I tell you to pray, Jesus. Well, I went home that night with Jesus. These was the best times I ever spent with Jesus, that 3.5 miles each way. Well, when Jesus was 12 years of age, we were preparing for our annual trip to Jerusalem, to the temple. Now, this was a trip where Jesus is 12, almost 13. Do you remember I told you were a man at 13? So we decided that it is time for us to tell him who he was, to tell him everything we knew about his birth and who he was. This was very difficult for me because I had to tell him I was not his father. I had to tell him I was not his father. We made the journey and we did exactly as we were deciding to do. We told him of the visions I had, the visions that Mary had, all the peoples that came to us. Everything that we could remember, we told him about who he was. Well, when we left Jerusalem and on our way back, at one point I went to meet with Mary and I said, I'd like to speak with Jesus. And she said to me, I thought he was with you. You may not know this. In my day, men and women, they travel in the separate caravans, but they come together for meals. And so I said to Mary, is he not with you? And she said, no, I thought he was with you. So she thought he was with me. I thought he was with her. And I said, well, when did we see him last? And we could not remember seeing him since the temple. So I said, let us retrace our steps and go back to the temple. We will meet at the temple. Let me tell you, I know that it is my fault I lost my son. What kind of a father loses his son? And so I started to be angry at myself. But when we got to the temple, Mary had not found him. I did not find him. So I said, let us go into the temple and pray to God and ask for some direction. And do you know that just as we walked into the temple, we saw Jesus there? He was there sitting. He was talking to the priests, to the rabbis. He was asking them questions. They were answering. They were asking him questions. He was answering. We were astounded by this. And then we ran up to him, and Mary let him have it. She said, what on earth do you think you were doing? We were scared half to death. Your father was scared, wondering where you were, that he lost you. Why did you do this to us? And do you know what he said to us? He said, but where else would you expect to find me? But in my Father's house. Don't you see? We just told him who he was. It should have made sense to us. He needed time to understand what we had said to him, yes? It should have made sense. So we put our arms around him and we said, we are just so happy you are safe. And we took him back home. And as your book said, he grew in age, and he grew in faith, and he grew in wisdom. And he grew well by the standards of men. A short time later, I was given a fever. In my day, we have two kinds of fevers. We have small fevers, and we have great fevers. And I was given a great fever. And I knew that I was going to die. And I became mad at God. I became angry at God. I said to God, why are you taking me now? Why do you take me now before I see what glory you have in store for our son? Why are you taking me now? After I died, God let me see what they did to my son. How they beat him, they threw him on the ground, they scourged him. I was there to watch as they put, from heaven I watched as they put the nails into his hands and into his feet. And all I could think of, I'm looking at the nails in his hands, and I'm thinking, that is the hand I kissed. That is the hand I kissed, and they put a nail. And then I realized that God knows always the best. He knew it was time to take me. Because if I was still on the earth, I would have done everything I could to prevent this. I could not stand by and let them do this to my son. That is my little boy. And they murdered him. Don't you see? God knew it was time. Many times as I lay dying in bed, Mary is always there and Jesus is there. One time Jesus got into bed with me. He said, I want you to know something, Papa. He said, you are my Father. You are my Father. He said, I had something for you, Papa. And he gave me this. This is not the one I made for him. He lost that years ago. This is one he made for me. He said, Papa, as you made me a gift when I entered into this world, I make this gift for you as you enter into the next. I'm going to leave you now with two things. One, God spoke to me, yes? But he spoke to me because I am his child. But you, each of you are his children. And just as God speaks to me, he speaks to you, yes? So I need you to know that when God spoke to me, like Elijah on the side of the mountain, he's looking for God. He's looking in the thunder, he's looking in the lightning, he's looking in the quaking of the earth. But where does he find God? The gentle breeze, in the whisper. That's where he finds God. Every time God spoke to me, it's in my quiet time. So all of you, you turn off the noise in your life and you listen for God. You find a quiet time, you listen for God. And when you hear God speak to you, you say to God, yes. And lastly this, we have been called the Holy Family, yes? What does holy mean? It means set apart. You have an altar, yes? In your altar in your church, you have an altar. It is set apart for one thing, to give praise, glory, and honor to God. That makes it holy. If my family is holy, it's because on a daily basis I raise them up before God and pray for them before God. But you, each of you are called to be a holy family. So you husbands, on a daily basis, you raise up your wives before God and your children. And you wives, you raise up your husbands. I know we don't deserve it. You raise up your husbands before God on a daily basis. And you children, on a daily basis, you raise your parents up before God. That is how we all become a holy family. Yes? Shalom. Adonai Echaim.